Welcome to Synced on Air, brought to you by Turfs Up Radio. I'm your host, Angelique Robb, and today I have Phil Graves from Daltile. Welcome, Phil. How are you?
I'm doing well, Angelique. Thank you very much. How are you?
Good, good. Yeah. Glad we finally got to meet for the first time at Equip in 2023. So, yeah, and then you came to our show a couple weeks ago. Let's tell everybody a little bit about your background and what you've been doing in the industry lately.
Okay, happy to. Happy to. So I've been in the hardscape industry to one degree or another for about 22 years now. Originally started selling Belgard concrete pavers in central Texas, Austin, San Antonio, a little bit west Texas. Then I went to work for Technoseal, who's based out of Quebec in Canada, makes installation products for the hardscape industry, polymeric sands, adhesives, edge restraints, cleaners and sealers, things like that. Did that for 13 years and led US sales for the last 10 of my time there.
Wow.
Towards the end of that, we were acquired by Oldcastle. So that's my second stint with Oldcastle. And at that point, I had recently seen porcelain pavers into the market. I eventually found myself in a position to have an opportunity to work for Daltile, leading their Xteriors branded program for outdoor living products. And there's a bunch of them, like hundreds, thousands, even SKUs for all environments. And so I've been doing that for the last 5 years for all of US and Canada.
Fantastic. And what did excited you about going into porcelain paving then?
Well, I was looking for opportunity at the time, and I had seen porcelain pavers 4 or 5 years prior when they first came to the US, and just thought that they had a tremendous future due to their high aesthetic value, their incredible durability, and the virtual no maintenance aspect of them in terms of they don't scratch, stain, or fade. So really, just a really enduring, beautiful aesthetic for outdoor decorative, horizontal surfaces.
Yeah. And so you've been traveling all over trade shows, events, rolling this out. And what do you think, I don't know, what are the biggest barriers to
Yeah,
getting this out to
I
everybody?
think I think the single biggest barrier, Angelique, is just installation acumen, right? Knowing how to put them in the right space, the right use, using the right installation system. So
Hmm.
because they're thicker than traditional tiles, their breaking strength is exponentially higher. So that means you can use them in unbonded on grade applications. You can use them in raised flooring applications on pedestals.
Hmm.
Then you can do bonded applications. People think they're very thin and very large formats. So when you compare it to a concrete paving slab, for instance, those typically wouldn't be recommended for vehicular use in an unbonded situation, whereas the braking strength on porcelain maybe allows it to, depending on what kind of traffic you're exposing it to. So really, that's it. It's know-how in general, and for the application specifically. And then there's a
Hmm.
little bit of a historical hamstring. When porcelain first came to the U.S., nobody that
Oh,
was distributing it knew how to install it really in anything other than a bonded application. So
oh,
there were a lot of
really?
early failures. Yeah, a lot of early failures.
And you're talking about 10 years ago. Are you saying,
Nearly 10
5
years ago.
years
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah. Like
okay.
9, 10 years ago is when they first started coming to market. And really the first ones, if I remember correctly, was Mirage being distributed with Belgard on a national level. And that's sort of what opened up the hardscape installer base to the fact that porcelain is an option, right? Like a thin cut dimensional stone, for instance. Um, so
Okay.
so that got concrete, or that got porcelain pavers into the sort of the hardscape world. And then, of course, 10 seconds after that, all the tile manufacturers and distributors that were buying much cheaper said, well, I'm going to go in there with a lower price. And so you had a combination of, paver reps that were selling porcelain pavers and not really knowing the installation nuances from one material to the other. And
Okay.
then tile guys coming in and snaking that business on price and having no idea how to install
Well, I was
porcelain.
going to say that's a total mismatch of environments to lay in,
A
and
lot of similarities from one installation to the next, but some significant differences, right?
well, and it's funny that you talk about that in particular because I remember in the UK, about 15 years ago, everybody started laying porcelain paving.
Mhm.
And at first they were recommending that it had to be, you had to pour a concrete slab and then
Mhm.
you had to bond to that. And then you're like, well, that's kind of an expensive way to install it. So do we have to do it
Mhm.
like, so again, we went through those iterations as well. But I don't think in the UK I mean, I left about 4 years ago, but we were not doing unbonded porcelain paving.
Correct.
So,
UK is almost completely bonded to a thick mortar bed.
yeah, yeah. And so it so do you think that, well, I guess I'm just wondering, that the methods that we were using there didn't translate very well to come over here from an education point of view, maybe, if they're using it's an Italian porcelain and coming over and that was another barrier to
Yeah,
entry or
I think so. And I don't want to talk out of school about things I don't know for fact.
mm,
But I think that a lot more of the installers in the UK were already doing like and similar methods with natural stone.
yes.
And I think that in the US, the bulk of the hardscape market is guys dry laying concrete pavers.
Well, I guess that's what I'm thinking too. It
So it's
does
a little bit of
seem
a further step from current practices.
well, that's good that you say that because I guess that's my impression too.
Yeah,
Like, um, it does seem like in Europe we are laying a lot more natural stone and it is all bonded and yeah,
yeah,
and so it's not that different. I think the problems that we were seeing, I guess, 10 years ago was cutting it
yeah.
was a big deal. And we did a lot of curves in our designs. And so that made the
Mhm.
porcelain like a lot more wasteful or yeah, harder to deal with on site. Like we couldn't cut it on site, but that's changed a lot too recently, hasn't it?
Correct. As long as you've got the right saw and the right saw blade, and then you're using the right technique with the saw blade and not just trying to jam through it as fast as you can. Most porcelain should cut just fine. It
Hmm,
just is slower and it's a little bit rougher on the blade. So when you're figuring out your cost, you have to take that into consideration. That's all.
hmm. Yeah. Well, and so I saw recently, was it on LinkedIn or Facebook that you put a question?
It was
Um,
Facebook. It was
was it
Facebook.
Facebook? Okay. Because I thought that was like, so I moved here 4 years ago. I just said that a few minutes ago, but I thought, I'm looking around. I'm in South Louisiana, and I'm like, there's there's not as many options with hardscape materials as I'm used to seeing.
Right.
And just really, still a lot of concrete driveways, poured concrete,
Mm-hmm.
which I know, I mean, in Scotland, we have freeze thaw cycles and it's spalling and, it's more problematic to do poured concrete outside. And so I realized that, but I'm surprised around, so porcelain paving, what I like so much about it is that as opposed to some of the natural stones in a slipperiness. Like I love natural stone, I love the look of it, but it can be really slippy. Like in Scotland, we had a lot of slate paving,
Mm-hmm.
and it looks really sharp. But if it's on a grade, it can be lethal. And so
Mm-hmm.
again, I like that porcelain paving has this. Um, you know the characteristic that you design to is to keep it from being slippy. So what are you seeing a lot of porcelain paving around pools and those kind of areas?
Yeah, we absolutely are. And I'm glad that you brought up the slip and skid resistance of porcelain because it does vary in terms of the test methodology from one part of the world
Oh,
to the next, right?
okay.
So In the US, we use something called dynamic coefficient of friction as the measure for whether or not it's going to be safe for use in a given area, right? If it's a commercial kitchen, if it's a shower floor, or if it's an outdoor commercial wet area sloped with minimal footwear, like a hotel swimming pool that's outside,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So that's out there, and the measure that we use per industry standard is dynamic coefficient of friction, or DCOF. And per a newer ANSI standard 326.3, the recommended standard, I know, sorry,
I
for
was like, whoa.
for outdoor, I have to, right?
Okay.
For outdoor wet areas is a minimum DCOF of 0.55. Now, there's a lot of tiles in the market from India and Europe, especially, and a lot of them are under the R system. So a lot of them will say we're R11, so we're good for outside. Unfortunately, it may be, right? May be good for outside, but it has to pass the DCOF test, because
As well.
if not, and somebody has a slip and fall and they want to sue, and then they test, and yeah, it meets R11, but it doesn't meet DCOF, then there's still liability. There's still liability for the owner, the distributor, the installer. I mean, everybody,
Yeah. Well, and
everybody.
how do
So
they compare or do,
there's
or is
there's no
it
direct comparison because the test methodology is different,
so
right? They don't
different?
test for the same thing, so there's no crossover chart for R11 equals whatever DCOF. Doesn't exist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. So as an
That's
importer, just be
huge.
careful, right? Because we
Yeah.
import at Daltile, we import 14 SKUs for stock in the U.S. from our sister company Marazzi in Italy, but
Yeah.
every single one is tested to the DCOF standard with right test methodology. The Bot 2000, it's like a little robot car that just measures the resistance. There's not a whole lot to it, but it's the one that the industry uses. And then that reminds me too. So here's porcelain, a little porcelain paver chip, right?
Oh, nice.
Nothing fancy to look at necessarily,
Yeah.
but I want to let your viewership or listenership know that I'm rubbing my hand on it right now. This is not an acceptable test for if it's slip and skid resistant.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I'll tell you, Angelique, I do it too, right? I always do it. The first thing you do is you go feel the
Well,
thing.
you want to feel it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Um, yeah, I'm a tactile customer, right? However, some of the tiles can feel much smoother than you would expect and still have no problem meeting the measure for wet and dry slip and skid resistance. And then some of them feel like they're reasonably rough, but they don't live outside very well. That rough texture maybe collects a bunch of debris and it gets slippery because it's not designed the
Okay.
right way. There's just it's not as simple as rub your hand on it. Yes, this passes the test,
Hmm.
right? Because it has to live outside afterwards. And
Yeah.
outside means things are going to collect on it and spill on it,
Yeah.
etc. And there are some, and this has been happening in the tile industry for a long time. People wanted more textured tiles for like hotel lobbies and things like that for people not to fall
Okay.
down.
Yeah.
And so putting texture on a tile is easy. Putting texture on a tile and making it easy to clean is more difficult.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because, like, yeah, I'm thinking, ooh, green slime growing on these tiles. I mean,
Right.
one of the benefits of porcelain paving is that it's not porous, so
Right. It doesn't absorb anything.
it can't get into it. But still, does that mean that more sits on top on
Right.
a gritty surface?
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, even if it's not very gritty, I every once in a while have the complaint that I put porcelain in and now it rained or the sprinklers went on or something, and there's water standing on the porcelain and I don't want to walk on it. It's dangerous. Well, it's tested for wet slip resistance, so it's not dangerous. And the reason that you're not used to seeing water sitting on top of your pavement is because it always soaks right in,
Yeah.
right? So with porcelain, it's not going to soak in. So it's
Yeah.
going to be there until you push it off with a broom or a squeegee, or it evaporates. That's pretty much it. Even
And
with proper slope, surface tension will still keep some water on top of the pavement.
because of that, yeah.
Yeah, it gets
I
to the
mean,
edge and stops.
okay.
Right.
And so it is, I mean, every time you use something different, this is what's challenging about using new
It's just
things
new.
is that,
Right.
well, but it's worth, you have your clients deciding between these different paving
Yeah.
choices, and you have, this one takes more maintenance but is more slippy, and this one takes less. So you want to weigh up the options accurately for your clients.
Mhm.
And so it's educating them on what they're going to see. You might see
Yeah,
some water standing on it.
yeah,
Splash in the water. Don't complain about it. Just splash in the water.
right. Pretty much, pretty much. Yeah,
Okay, well,
and to that point, and that actually brings up another really good point. Even if the homeowner is really desirous of a porcelain paver, patio, pool deck, driveway, whatever it happens to be, one of the reasons I posed that question on Facebook, which it was a Facebook forum for hardscapers, right, is for the installer base.
mhm.
And the reason I posed that question is because I know for a fact that there are a lot of people that want a porcelain pavement and get talked out of it by the installer, right? And it's for some of those same reasons, just a little bit unsure about how to install properly, afraid of callbacks because of ongoing joint sand maintenance.
Well,
You know,
and to be fair, we've all had these things where you think you're
that's right.
getting the next best thing. Um, and I what I thought was interesting is that, exterior porcelain has been in circulation for a really long time. It's just not in the US.
Right.
And I think, and I didn't know that about, I guess we're saying is like 10 years ago that it just got sent out and people didn't know
Right.
how to install it and you have some problems. I mean, that'll put anybody off
Yes, for sure.
using something new.
Yeah.
Um, but I guess the the flip side of the coin is there's a lot of experience with
Mhm.
porcelain paving. It's knowing yourself where you're getting it, and
Right.
not all porcelain is maybe created equal because it
Mhm.
is a man-made product. And but the testing is a huge thing because am I right in that most porcelain is made in Europe or
Uh,
no?
I
Oh
think it's
no.
fair to say that most of it is. Yeah, there's a lot in
Okay.
India and a lot in China, and a decent amount, a pretty good amount in the US as well.
Okay.
So, what I can tell you is that globally, Mohawk Industries, which is Daltile's parent company, is by quite a ways the number one ceramic and porcelain manufacturer in the world.
Worldwide. Wow. Okay.
So lots and lots of different countries
Yeah.
manufacture.
But I do think the dry laying, is that how you call it, of
Yeah,
porcelain isn't something that has been done, at least in the UK, as much
I'd
as
say
it
I would
seems like it's
agree.
already been done here.
Yeah, UK definitely not as much. Probably some areas in like Italy and Germany that I know that they have experimented with it. Some people putting out some thicker porcelain
Mm,
have experimented with that as well. I think that we have dialed in probably a very solid assembly for still doing a dry lay. Um, I would still encourage any installer doing it that way to set an expectation that there will likely be some ongoing joint material maintenance,
okay.
but also set the expectation that that's not a failure of the pavement. That's not going to cause any structural problems with the pavement. And the porcelain material itself, you don't have to seal it. It's not really going to age. So
Yeah.
if you want to do a complete dry lay, we've got a recommended system, for permanent spacers, edge
Okay.
restraint, and joint material. Um, but with a little bit of movement, that joint material is going to be able to withstand a certain amount, and then
Yeah.
it'll go past that, sort of limit that it's got to withstand movement. So
Mhm.
can I go on one little bit about
Oh, of
sort of
course. Yeah. Yeah.
so we've got a system that's more of a hybrid. We recently at Daltile, our exteriors program, we're really kind of all in on the Romex installation system right now. But they have an interesting sort of hybrid system that if you don't want to have the whole project bonded to that sort of porous concrete slab that you make with their truss binding material, you can just make a truss curb, right? An underground curb that's the width or maybe a little bit wider than your outermost porcelain
Oh,
paver.
okay.
Bond that paver to that, then the entire infield, the field all around the curb or up against structure, whatever it happens to be, just do a loose chipstone, but
Ah,
still back butter your tile and bond to the chip stone. And in that case, you don't need permanent spacers The curb makes your edge restraint. And now there's so much more lateral stability because you've glued all that chip stone to the bottom of the paver, and it's all stuck in to chip stone. It's totally interlocked in there. It can't go side to side.
Okay. Yeah,
So
yeah.
if you do that and use the Romex joint material, it'll still give you a 5-year warranty on the assembly.
Yeah.
Where you're not going to have joint problems.
Okay. Yeah. And then I guess it's still quite permeable as well as a
Still
system.
permeable, and
Yeah.
it installs almost the same as you would if you weren't bonding anything, because you have to do edge restraint. The only
Yeah.
really addition on this is you have to back butter the tile. But once you get good at it, a couple 5-gallon pails, flip the tile over, one person's buttering,
Mm,
other person's laying. It's really fast.
yeah.
And since
And
you don't have to do trass for the entire field, it takes a lot of cost out too. Now that's for pedestrian only. Vehicular, we want you to do a full trass bed or bond to a slab.
okay. Okay. Well, yeah, so then that's given three different options of how to lay it.
Yeah.
Um, so I haven't looked back at that Facebook post. I saw it when you first posted it. What are people saying?
You know, we got sort of the whole gamut of objections, some a lot better than others, and some objections based on sort of known, falsehoods out there or myths, like
Uh,
things that somebody has said and grew legs and don't have any sort of scientific backing to them, right? Just
okay.
that's out there with every material, right?
It
Uh,
is.
one I found interesting was, well, if I drop one and break it, it's a lot more expensive than if I had dropped a concrete paver and broke it, which that's fair, right? Uh, to a certain extent. If the tile breaks, it's probably going to shatter, so you're not going to have maybe a usable piece for cuts, whereas a concrete paver, you might.
You might.
But
Okay.
in all honesty, if we're talking more apples to apples, say a 24 by 24 porcelain to a 24 by 24 concrete, right? Not versus a 4 by 8, that doesn't count. That's not
Yeah,
fair.
yeah.
If we compare, apples to apples in that way, they're basically, depending on the country of origin for the porcelain and how far you are from the plant for the concrete, they could be the same exact cost, or the concrete could actually be more on a per square foot
Really?
basis. Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of your made in the USA porcelain is at a very competitive price point now. It's only 9 pounds per square foot, so it's very freight friendly. So we can go 3 times the amount of square foot on a truck than a 6 centimeter concrete paver.
Wow.
So
Okay.
imagine how much farther you can go and not have a
Yeah.
lot of freight burden.
Well, and you know what was getting big when I left the UK was the really thin wall cladding.
Yeah.
What do you call that? Wall cladding?
Yeah, cladding is fine. Yeah, yeah. And often though, you're talking about the really large panels.
Yes, like
Yeah,
four
so those
feet
are
by
often.
4 feet, something like that.
Oh yeah, we make them 5 1/4 by 10 1/2.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Huge, yeah, and only
Yeah.
6 mil or 12 mil thickness. So those
Okay.
products are often used for flooring and wall and ceiling inside. And then
Okay.
for outside, you can bond it to a certain backer and then mechanically attach it to the outside of a building up to skyscraper height. So a
Okay.
ventilated facade is what that's called, or a rain screen system.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and those
Are,
are those are really cool. And actually, that same material in a matte finish, it makes one of the most gorgeous outdoor countertops you can possibly have, because you can have a really, really like delicate Italian marble look, but it's porcelain. It has all the same properties. It won't scratch, it won't stain, it won't fade. Totally UV stable.
okay.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really
And
a
so
gorgeous countertop.
is that being used a lot here or still
Not
in?
yet. Not
Okay.
yet. More commercial spaces so far. I mean, between fabrication and cutouts and things like that, it's going to take a minute for it really to find purchase in the broader network.
Yeah.
But commercial jobs and custom home jobs probably, is a great, couple of segments for that. And then higher end hardscape guys will get into it soon enough.
Well, because yeah, we were using them for freestanding walls,
Mhm.
outdoor sunrooms, things like that. So, you're talking about for the kitchen countertops, but it could be for the whole kitchen.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah. So,
absolutely.
I mean, like, so yeah.
Yeah. We've got a
Ah,
picture in our catalog with just one piece with a cutout for the fireplace. And that's it. It's That's the outdoor fire
Very
pit.
sleek and
Yeah,
well, and less maintenance because the joints are often what
right.
causes maintenance before anything else. So
That's
yeah.
correct. And with the
Yeah.
joints, if you use the right joint material, you shouldn't have maintenance issues.
Awesome. Yeah, this is it. Talking about doing it right.
Yeah.
And yeah, and you presented at our Sync Live event recently in Atlanta. Did you get any
Okay.
good questions there or
Yeah, lots of good
challenges?
questions. Now, unfortunately, I found out about a challenger I had, but he wasn't willing to speak up during the presentation. Only later on at the Top Golf where I was not in attendance. But
Oh, really? Oh no, that's not fair. Then that's
no, I
not a
was hoping he was
proper
going to come back
challenge.
the next day because apparently he had some choice words. But I would have been happy to.
Oh,
I would have been happy to debate him. No, nothing bad.
oh, okay.
Just I didn't. I thought that guy was full of it, basically. Right?
Oh,
Yeah. Other than that, though, no. A
well,
lot
this
of
happens
yeah,
sometimes.
a lot of really good questions, and a lot of people came back to our booth immediately when I was done presenting to have a larger conversation about it. So,
Well,
yeah,
I did kick you off the stage the
you
first
did.
time. I'm
You did.
sorry.
I was ready to go, but I didn't want to be rude to the audience.
Oh, yeah.
No, well,
I
let's.
did I did feel bad, but we were trying to keep things on schedule and you're like, okay, next.
Yep,
Like, but I thought it
totally
was
good. Totally
fantastic
good.
that you were getting so much interaction because I think, especially at these events, it's quiet afterwards and
Yeah.
if you're asking questions you bring a lot of attention but you were getting lots of questions so
Mhm, mhm.
um always a good sign. um so and you also mentioned the application of pedestals, and I think you have those some in your frame right
Yeah,
there.
the ones right there aren't the ones that I'm really. Those are a
Oh,
competitive
okay.
brand of what I'm selling.
Oh,
The other ones I've got are in a. Here, I'll grab one real quick.
okay, okay.
Okay, here's an example. Here's an example of our preferred vendor's pedestal. But there,
Awesome.
it's a very simple system, and a lot of people are kind of afraid of them. And there's really no reason to be. I mean, compared to getting a paddle mixer and mixing powder with water and sand and aggregates and things like that, that's much more complicated than this. This is just basically like Legos, right? So it screws up or down for height adjustment.
Hmm.
And then I picked the bad one. You can see this yellow ring in here. It's
Yeah.
tightened all the way down right now. If it were loosened up, this top bit would actually have some range of motion.
Oh,
And what
okay.
yeah, and what that does is when you build a pedestal what's typically on a roof deck, not always, but the vast majority of the time. So that roof deck is what we call a flat roof, but it's really a low slope roof, right?
Yeah.
So there's some slope to the roof because any water that falls on it has to find a scupper or find a drain or otherwise get off the roof.
Yeah.
It's not good for a building. So in this case, you put the pedestal on the sloped roof, and typically you would shim underneath or shim on top to make a level floor,
Hmm.
right? And then the floor can be level because the joints between the paving units are empty, right? So there's
Okay.
nothing in it. So the water just
Yeah.
runs through, hits that slope roof deck and runs to drain and gets off the roof. So with this one being free flowing on the top, which it's not right now because it's locked down and I can't unlock it with my finger. Um, if you have pavers of equal weight resting on the top, it will automatically compensate for up to a 5-degree slope of the floor. So that makes this particular system really, really fast and easy to work with.
Yeah. Well, and I always thought like so in Scotland we had some houses that had ventilation like under the floor level. And we'd have clients say, I want a patio here, and you can't block up that airflow.
Yeah, that crawl
And so
space.
yeah. And so it's really a I saw a lot of potential for just doing it even on earth, but I guess you would have to put little concrete pads under
Yeah,
each one, would you?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly,
But
exactly. And
in
there I
that
fixed
case,
it.
oh,
So
look at that.
now you can see it'll move, right, and
Yeah.
compensate. And then those are the spacer bars, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's a really very simple system, and you can build these things up really high, like over 2 feet high, even 3 feet high, and then you've got a usable space up top totally flat and level. All your utilities are hidden underneath, but you can
Yeah.
still lift up the paver and get to them if you need to. And now you've got a beautiful, usable, functional space on the top of the building. And who doesn't want
Yeah.
to hang there?
Yeah. And you could even go, instead of you pick a gray patio and then the trends change and you could change out the colors really easily.
You
And yeah,
can. Or if you had a big fancy event, you could make a red carpet out of red pavers for that event, right?
oh, that would be cool. Yeah.
And if the trend changes, you get to sell your old patio,
Yeah,
right?
because
Because
you haven't
it's
bonded
still
it to
perfect,
anything. It's not,
right?
yeah.
And it doesn't
Well,
age outside.
yeah. So if you want to, well, because I mean, I do have friends that do things like that, like they redecorate their living
Yeah,
rooms like
yeah,
every other year or something. But like you could redecorate your outdoor space very
yeah.
easily that way.
And literally sell the old material if you wanted to, or
That is
or
really
gift it,
cool.
gift
Yeah.
it to your
Or
kids
move it
after they
somewhere
graduate
else.
college, right?
Like,
Yeah,
okay, well, or you could try out a patio and go, do I want a patio here or not? Use it as a tester and then, okay, now bond it in place and
those
then use the
those are some
spaces.
first world problems for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, as a designer, like I've done a lot of design work, and then you go, well, if you can't visualize it, it makes it hard for the clients to figure it out. So,
Right.
or figure out what size patio they want. And um, so there may be some place in there for just like trial patios.
What's funny, this isn't necessarily anything that's that important to your audience at large, but for our architectural sales reps, we created like a vinyl photograph version of full size pavers, because if we have a 32 by 32 paver, our arc rep's not going to wear the high heels and carry 65 pounds of tile up 2 flights of stairs, right? um,
Yeah.
so now, yeah, now we do that with a full size piece. You just unfold it, then you put a little 4x4 chip on there and say, this is for scale and pattern. This is for true color and texture.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it's smart.
That is. And
It really
so,
helps our staff to present it more consistently.
well, and I also think landscape designers, residential landscape designers, and landscape architects would like that facility too. So
Yeah,
can they just call up, call
yeah.
your number
Right now,
and
it's not a for giveaway or for purchase, so
okay,
please don't
okay.
call me asking for it. I'm not saying that down the road that might not be something that we would provide. Probably, I don't know if there would be a small cost. See, that would go to the designer. If it was a design build firm, it's easier. You kick a rebate
Yeah,
or something like that, or you discount back on that. But I love the tool, and we're always trying to think of ways to make it easier to present for the design community.
yeah. Well, yeah. I think it's a great tool to have, and also helping clients visualize what they're getting before they press the button. So,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe if you're in the audience and you like that, reach out to me maybe and let us know, and then we can let Phil know the results of the of the query.
Do a little test and learn on that. We'll test
Yeah,
it
yeah, let's do that. Well,
Yeah,
awesome.
well,
Well, go ahead.
can I just pop something in real quick
Sure.
before I forget about the famous post, not really on Facebook. I kind of posed two things, which I believe is why it got as much traffic as it did. And the main thing of the two, well, the first one is we've got 150 architectural reps across the country who are going to be talking to specifiers about our exteriors program. So we
Mhm.
will be driving specifications with Daltile and most likely Romex and Profilitech pedestals and some specific systems and MAPE for other bonded applications. Because we're going to be driving specifications, that really needs to compel the installer base to get trained,
Yeah,
because these are good. There's going to be hard specs. It's no, you can't flip
that's
it.
a great point. So how do they get trained?
Well, I've got a playlist on YouTube that has, shoot, I don't know, 6 hours plus of educational content for bonded applications, for Romex style applications, for pedestals, even for flexible base. One job in St. George, Utah, where we follow the entire install of a flexible base over permeable subgrade. In
Okay.
that case, we don't even put any joint material in. We just left them open and built a perfectly flat floor. And it's been in for over 2 years and it's in perfect shape right now. So there's some
Oh,
really
wow.
high value educational content. We're going around and putting on some seminars and some in-ground displays. It's where your higher vis or your larger hardscape yards around the country. I mean, we're really doing as much as we can with a relatively small force dedicated to the exteriors program, while also trying to educate our really large force at large on sort of the basics.
Yeah.
We have some specialized reps from the hardscape segment that know a lot about installation, and we've got good video content as well. Really good.
That's fantastic. Well, what we'll do is on the show notes, I can put a link to that
Yeah,
so
perfect.
people can find it easily. And um, like we talked about before, maybe we do something in the publication on, you know, like the three methods that you recommend for installing porcelain paving. I think that would be nice and educational and maybe get some comfort out there with
Yeah,
you using something new.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. I would love to. I would love to. And for the hardscape segment, at least, this new Romex installation system, it installs like and similar to installing chipstone right now. You're just screeding out chipstone. You just have to put a little binder in it first. Otherwise,
Okay.
it's very, very like and similar. And if anybody's been paying attention, you'll know that it's sturdy because we drove a tank over it about 50 times.
I meant to ask you about that earlier. Yeah, great, great. I got a picture in front of the picture of the tank
Yeah, right,
with you
right.
at Equip at Hardscape North America.
Yeah,
So
that's right. No,
yeah,
it had held up to very heavy truck traffic for 6 months. I mean, fully loaded dump trucks turning on it, fully loaded 18 wheelers with a Moffat on the back. So we decided to do something to. We knew that it was going to hold up to the tank straight line, but we didn't know if it was going to hold up to it. Braking on it, turning on it, pivoting on it. And it did. So the bond didn't break, the tile didn't break, the joint material didn't come out. So we're all in on Romex. I'm telling you guys, every single landscape architect that I present Romex to, especially if I got someone with me from Romex, the specifiers lose their mind. So it's coming, right? It's
yeah,
absolutely coming. We got to have a
got to be
good sort of
ready.
three-way partnership between manufacturer, specifier, and installer to make sure this grows as fast as it can for everybody, because you're not getting callbacks, and you're installing systems that are very, very durable and low maintenance. So it's something that's going to only grow in popularity.
Yep, yep. Awesome. Well, great job leading the country on it.
Working on it, working.
And how can our audience reach you for more information? I guess we'll put that YouTube link. Do you
Yeah,
want to?
YouTube link. You
Yeah,
can visit our website, www.daltile, that's Daltile, daltile.com/exteriors. And exteriors has no E on the beginning. It starts with the X and then the rest of it spells out the same. So daltile.com/exteriors is the best way to find more information.
love it. Great. Well, thanks for being on the show today and look forward to working with you more, Phil.
All right. Likewise, thanks for having me. And let's plug your event, by the way.
Oh,
So
okay, let's do that.
recently exhibited at Sync Live. It was the second year of the show, right? I mean,
Yes, that's
technically
right.
third, but second under that brand, if I remember correctly.
That's right.
And just had some very, very, very high value, good quality leads come out of that. The attendees are absolutely decision makers, and some of them even bring around some of their regional staffs to align to the decision that they're trying to make while at the show.
Mhm.
And there's just a lot of opportunities for educational content too. So an interesting show that blends the three phases: design, installation, and maintenance. And having those three phases finally talk to each other, I think will build more economical and more sustainable projects out in the marketplace. So really respect and appreciate what you're doing, and great show.
Oh, oh, thank you so much. Well, you know, we believe we're bringing something to the market that's unique and can elevate everybody, even if you're only doing one part of that whole cycle. by learning from those around you, we can yeah, just get better solutions,
Yeah,
be it longer lasting, longevity, or quality. Well, usually that goes hand in hand, but also more environmental as well, so more sustainable. And
life cycle costs for maintenance.
exactly, exactly. No, thanks for selling it. No,
It's an easy sale because from what I've seen is every time each person in the chain or however tangentially involved they may be in the entire process, the whole thing is a system. And if the different
it
parts of the
is.
system, just like a company, if your company is all siloed and marketing's not talking to sales, sales isn't talking to production, the company is a mess. This is a system made up of independent companies.
Hmm.
But if they talk to each other, the whole machine works so much better. And you're going to have a lot of happier end users as a result.
Well, and our industry raises, our visibility and our professionalism. So that's the goal for all of these things, huh? What you're doing as well. So thank you for being at our show. I really appreciate you being there and teaching all of our audience a lot about porcelain, and I'm glad you had a lot of interest. So
Yeah, well, it
great.
was my pleasure. And thank you, Angela. Very much
Awesome.
appreciated. All right.
Well,
Have a good
thanks,
day.
Phil. You
You bet.
too.
All
Okay.
right.
Have a great time. Bye.
Bye bye.